Hi, I'm Marsha Mason, and today we're going to talk about leaf greens using convenience paints. This is the convenience strategy. This is the second video about painting leaves and foliage in watercolor. The first one dealt with how to mix your own pairs of blue and yellow to make greens. And we looked at these charts with real leaves, just like today, to see if you can get there from here. Now, today we're going to explore a different strategy of using pre-mixed paints called convenience greens as a base to make foliage in our paintings. I like to use single pigment paints to mix my own greens. Another strategy is to start with a convenience green as a base and add other colors to get variation in the hue, that's the color, the saturation, that's the brightness and dullness or chroma, and the value, and that's the darkness and lightness. So when you choose a convenience green, remember that there is no one-to-one correspondence between marketing names and pigments. Now, here's some marketing names of convenience greens. Emerald green, permanent green, hooker's green, sap green, olive green, bright green, vivid green, and leaf green. Now, these don't really tell you what you're buying. Some of them have 1, 2, or even 3 pigments in them, depending on the brand. But most start with a phthalo green, that's pigment green 7 pigment in them. Now, I've got some charts where I have mixed my own convenience greens with phthalo green as the base. And you can tell they're really pretty colors. Now, get out your magnifying glass and look at the pigment number on the back of your tubes of paint. These are what tell you what you're buying. These are standardized abbreviations for pigments, and there is a one-to-one correspondence for these pigment numbers and the pigments. Make sure the pigments, particularly the yellows in the mix, are light fast. So many of them are not. Now, these are my 3 favorite yellows for botanicals. The Nickel Azo yellow, in Winsor Newton it's called transparent yellow. That's pigment yellow 150, PY 150. My second favorite is a cooler yellow. It's benzimidazolone, or Benz yellow. Winsor Newton calls it Windsor yellow, and that is pigment yellow 154, PY 154. The third one is quinacridone gold, and that Daniel Smith calls it quinacridone gold. It's pigment orange, PO 49. Now you can check out the properties of pigments and paint brands, which I do all the time on handprint.com. So today we are going to check out the properties, or we're going to play with 2 convenience greens as our basis. We're going to use sap green for dull and dark, and we're going to use leaf green for bright and light. And I went outside, I got some leaves, and none of them were bright and light because it's not early spring anymore. But here, this shows you what we're doing. Here's a leaf that has sunlight shining through it from my flashlight, and that is the kind of bright green that we're talking about when the sun hits the leaves in the morning, all year round. I've made 2 reference charts, and they are right here. Now, this one, let's just cover up some of this. This one is for our light. I'm using the Holbein leaf green. The components are the Benz yellow I described and our phthalo green. And then this chart down here is a Holbein sap green. I like it because it uses 3 colors that really make it so you can adjust things if you use a little more or a little less of each one yourself, if you mix them yourself. And that's comprised of the nickel azo yellow, the transparent yellow, the phthalo green, and the Holbein quinacridone magenta, which is pigment red 122. When you go looking at the marketing names for magentas, there's a whole bunch. So check the pigment numbers on those, or you won't be getting what you think you're getting. Now, when you look at these two charts, just kind of comparing them one to the other, you see that these have lighter values in general than these. And you can particularly see that when you look at the colors that I added, to get the dullness. So, I used a Windsor Violet on both of these. It's a great mixing complement for the two convenience greens. You can see how you get quite a range of color and value, and it really does lose its chroma. It becomes quite dull as you add more and more of the Windsor Violet to the leaf green. The other one I used is a black. It's a lamp black in this case. And even though the color doesn't change quite as dramatically as this, you do get some darks and dullness. Now down here to the sap green, I added the purple, the Diox Violet, and it really does go to a deep, beautiful taupey, dark greeny color. And then when I add my permanent magenta, and this one is PV19, Pigment Violet 19, Holbein, you see you get another range that goes into really beautiful kind of reddish browns, very pretty. Now those are pigments you can kind of see here. We've got the purples and the, here's a red violet, but pretty strong, and they dull the colors. So that's our dull. Now you can also shift the colors. So we're going to shift it to the blue on here. And there we go. We've got some French ultramarine blue that takes it into a yummy grayed out teal almost. And then a Windsor blue, which is pretty bright and doesn't dull so much as the ultramarine blue. And it gets right into the almost an emerald green here. Now down here, when we do that, we've got same here. We've got French ultramarine blue on the bottom, and it gets into a real dulled and cooler green. And then you've got the Windsor blue here that's a little clearer, but really gorgeous, yummy greens. And I did make a little sample right here where instead of mixing the paint, I glazed over. So I put, it looks like I have two overlapping stripes of paint. This is the convenience green, and this is the shadow. And you can see how my green went darker and cooler underneath. Now you can also make things warmer. I added 3 cool reds here. A quinacridone magenta, a permanent magenta, and a perylene maroon. And I wanted to talk about perylene maroon a little bit. There are some colors that I don't find very attractive. Perylene maroon is one of them, but I get it because it's a wonderful mixing color with the greens and blues. So that is a whole nother strategy, is to buy paints that mix. You don't use them on their own really, because you might not like the colors. They don't work for you. So here we are warming up our convenience green, and you can see that only one of them really stays pretty green as you keep mixing more and more with it. The other two turn orange pretty fast, and you end up with some kind of redwoods on steroids reds in there, kind of like a quinacridone burnt orange almost. Now down here, with our darker convenience green, the sap green, we have yellows. I added a little bit more down here of the yellow that's already in the paint, and it does go a little bit brown. It is more olivey. And then a cooler yellow, the Benz yellow, that really is pretty straightforward, doesn't really dull it much at all, and takes it down to a very pretty grassy green. So what happens when you mix some colors is you're not just going to be shifting the hue, you're going to be shifting the value, the darkness and lightness too. So because as the paints dry, they lose their saturation, you need to watch how much water you put in them, and just pay attention. It's stuff you just have to learn. Now I wanted to show you different ways to apply the paint. I'm going to do that right here. I drew out a couple of leaves, and I wanted to show you some things I've just touched on. The first is, well, let's get a little paint here. The first is putting down your shadows and light first. And I've done that right here with this leaf. I've just done some little patterns on it. Just nothing in particular for shape, just like a leaf might have patterns from the plants that are between it and the sun. So what I'm going to do is glaze over my underpainting. And this is a transparent mixture, so I should be able to do that pretty easily. Let's see what we get. There we go. That green didn't really show up as much as it looks yellow under this light. Well, they do list the green second on the list. The yellow is the major ingredient in this one, as you can imagine. Our leaf green, Holbein leaf green. I'm just going to put a little more paint on there so you can really see how I've got a leaf here that is obviously green, but it's got a lot of stuff going on because I have light and shadow underneath. Okay, now that's I think that's a pretty good example. I've used a phthalo green under this part. You can see how I get a different shadow color than when I use the French ultramarine blue, like under these two parts. Now, the other thing you can do is mix things before you put them down, and that's what we've been doing all today. I'm going to mix a little bit of one of this, maybe it's both of the magentas here. Let's see here. Okay, that's good. Okay, I have mixed this color on paper. I'm sorry, in my palette, and I'm going to squirt out a little bit more leaf green and put that in there too. There we go. Okay, so I pretty much have mixed that in my palette. I cheated a little bit. I added some of that on there. But there is a way that you can down a wash in your leaf shape. And then do what they call charge the wash. And this is where watercolor gets really fun, because you really don't have absolute control over it. You have to give it up and see what kind of magic the paint will do for you. So I'm going to add a little bit of my French ultramarine blue, I think, to this, and get it kind of juicy. Juicy, juicy, come here. Oh, right there. There we go. And let's see, I think I'll just... Now if I had this paper tilted, I would definitely be getting some different shapes of there we go, of the little other paints that I'm putting in there. But it's flat, so we're just gonna, it's gonna kind of be where it lands. Now there's quite a bit of variation here already. Let's just do a little bit more. All of these colors are going to go together no matter how different you make them, because they have the base in them. They have that convenience green in them. I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow out here. There we go. That is a bright, there we go. And maybe a touch of, yes, touch of burnt sienna. Okay, and just do that. There we go. Alrighty, so those are the 3 ways you can apply these mixes as an underpainting for as a glaze over some underpainting of shadow and light. You can mix it in the palette and put it on, or you can mix it on the paper. That's kind of fun. So what is the best green to use in a painting? That's the big question. The answer is it's the one that fits the context of your painting. It fits the context, and that includes 3 things. First is the overall values, the lightness and darkness in your painting. The second is what plants are you painting? Rose has a certain color. Fertilized lawn has a different color. Cactus has a different color. So the plants, values in plants, and the third is the brightness and hue, the color, the chroma and color of the light that's shining on it. Now, I'll be doing a video that shows how the time of day changes the color of the light that's shining on foliage, and that will affect what color your leaves should be so that they fit into the context of your painting. Now, next time I'm going to talk about other colors of leaves, and even more important, how that sunlight changes the foliage colors through the hours of the day. That's it for today. We encourage you to post a photo of your paintings on Rancho Cordova Art's Facebook page, Rancho Cordova Arts, and I thank you for watching, and I'll be back with more videos, so stay tuned.